I think it would be easiest if you ask questions, because so we don't have to shout over one another. But seriously, I think it would be easiest if you have questions to us, if you knew what you want to learn. We understand we came here because of the great water which was showed here yesterday, but it's just one of the things that we've done. Right now, we already completed. Finished the set to the Hevelius, another big thing that it's our huge project right now. It's our common child right now. There were two of us working on this. So if you have any questions you would like to learn, anything from us to know what it looked like from our side, what our cooperation looked like, or I don't know, any questions that you might have. Even life, the meaning of life questions, we will answer them. Let's divide this question. Maybe let me start how we managed to meet, because I think it started from my initiative rather than Kasper's initiative. I started my first. I always dreamed to meet like this perfect scriptwriter that would write fantastic things for me, and I was sure myself that I will not be able to write myself, because it's some sort of a secret skill, secret lore, and only Americans can do that. And I was looking for many years. I haven't met anyone, and finally I decided that I will tackle the problem of writing, and I started to write myself. The first Royst, which at that time was something different. It was a movie, but it was, I would say, the origin of Royst. I was in a party with the parents of my friend, and they had a big library, and I was standing there. There were plenty of books there, and I don't know why. I reached for one of the books, a very, very thin one called Klub by Kasper Bajon. I said, "Wow." I read on the back cover that he's a director, scriptwriter. Were you a director at that time? No. A filmmaker. But I took that to my hand without. I read it and I was thrilled, and because I mean it was written that he's a filmmaker, I decided I will not call that guy because he will reject me. So I was writing Royst by myself, and a few years passed, and I was doing a commercial for T-Mobile. I remember I was a DOP for many years. I must say that I must say that T-Mobile, after my commercial campaign was going down in terms of stock price, and so I killed the brand. But Kamil was the creative guy. So we were working in a team that works in copywriting and creative writing. I didn't know that it is Kasper, but I noticed that he's an interesting guy that doesn't interfere, which I loved, which was very important for us filmmakers, those who were the technical guys behind the commercial. And suddenly it occurred that it's Kasper Bajon, about whom I thought for many years that we meet on the set without any sort of earlier preparation. But I asked Kasper, hey, maybe you will read something that I wrote. Kasper immediately said that, yeah, why not? He read this Royst of mine, and we started to meet to think how you can improve that, and this is how our cooperation started from my point of view. Mine is very similar, but it's very interesting. I must say that yesterday we went to for a dinner, and we were sort of our paths have crossed. There was a big difference. I'm much younger. There's a big difference of age between us. Yes, Janek is younger, and we were sort of missing one another. We were crossing our paths, but we had the same group of friends. Where Janek stole this book, I was in a meeting at their place where this guy was presenting his book with photographs. It was in Elektoralna Street in Warsaw, and I was there with my mother, and we were sitting there, and Janek came there, and he looked so cool. He came up, they gave us high five, and he was driving a Corsa, if I remember well, and it was like some legendary Corsa, if I recall well. He was in a full film school. I don't know if I think I wasn't studying yet even, but it was so that our parents knew each other. We had common friends. I was younger, so then we started to work together on T-Mobile thing. And for me, it was so that Jan said that I was not interfering. I think I'm not interfering as a scriptwriter. I do go to filming set, but as just for a company. I'm not a guy who sits at the preview and makes remarks. I was working on filming sets before at my father's. I was learning all that. I was with Krzysztof Krause. I've worked on those sets, and I know what it looks like. And I have lectures here for the scriptwriters. For me, it's an absurd to have a scriptwriter on the set. As a person who sees this from the other side, I know there are scriptwriters who are sitting on a preview. I think there's nothing more boring than sitting on a preview when you're a scriptwriter. Not only the crew doesn't listen to you at all, they consider you a guy who we can babble away. I don't know what I would have to comment. Like, should I comment on how they speak or how the dress should be red or not green in the side notes? The scriptwriter is absolutely unnecessary on the set. Only as a matter of a company, you can drop in for a sec, but being on a set without any function is the most boring thing in the world. After 2 hours, you just want to leave that place. You start to chain smoke because that's the only thing you have to do. So I'm going to those sets, but like in reality, to be more serious, not to be so ironic. For me, it's a magical thing for me that whenever I watch things that Janek did and I wrote, for me it's always surprising in a positive way. In a way that there's always some extra value that I didn't foresee when I was writing, and it surprises me, and I watch those things with a huge satisfaction, and they pull me in. And they draw me in. I theoretically I know what will happen because I was the scriptwriter. There are like 3 stages: script, filming set, and the editing. And after the edit, it will not be the same piece of work. But the scriptwriter more or less knows what will happen there. And I think generally we don't have big changes. And I should know what's there, but I'm always watching that with great satisfaction. I'm always surprised in a very positive meaning of that word. The casting, for example. But I'm also not writing thinking about the cast. So this is also a great experience for me. Especially when I talk to someone, Jan is actually the only person I work with. There may be 2 other people, but he's the only person with whom I work on a constant basis. We never had an argument, never. There's never tension. We play the same game. We want the best for the product. So it is not so that somebody plays his own personal game or a game of his personal ambition. It's a team. It's a teamwork. So there are no quarrels here because we both know. I think we both know who is right at which point. It's always well argumented, and the other person says, "Okay, I understand this, I accept this, and this is how it works." I think it's really good. I do have a feeling that I'm never sort of set away I'm not being distanced from this process, but at the same time, I know where my place is. I know the crew of Janek. We are sort of friends, so it's like coming to a family reunion every time. Kasper, thank you for those really nice words, and now it's my turn. Kasper was right to say that we've never had a quarrel, ever. We never even got to the stage of any sort of argument that enters in the emotional sphere. The only discussions we have are the discussions how to solve a problem, so to push the story forward. Because this is all there is. For me, a good script is a good script which you start to read and you can't stop reading this until the last page. This is a good script. If after 10-15 minutes you start to think about something else, it means that there's something wrong there. Kasper is a great writer. He's my dream come true about a scriptwriter who is also a true writer, like a novelist. This is our tradition of the cinema of 1950s, 60s, 70s, that good writers were also writing scripts for filmmakers. And for example, Tadeusz Konwicki, just like Kasper, was directing his own things, and that was fantastic. This permeation, interweaving of the worlds of novels and cinema. Then for some time in Poland, it somehow disappeared. But for me, Kasper is Tadeusz Konwicki, and I'm not saying that in order to compare them, because that's not my intention. But this ability to think through image, through literature, you can see that in the writing. This is what I said yesterday. You can see a good script when you read it. Thank you. That was very nice. You will not get better than me now. What else did I want to say? Maybe that will come back to me. I think that we don't quarrel. We don't meet that often either. We work in a system where Kasper is sending to me. Of course, we're meeting every now and then. So, for example, when we're making the third Royst, we had to sit down and brainstorm what it will be all about, etc., etc. But then Kasper wrote this. He sends me. Let's say we have a scene breakdown. I'm getting into the scene breakdown. I'm sending that back to Kasper, and he's sending that back to me. And we're doing this email-based ping pong, and we call each other. But generally, I wanted to say one thing, and now I remember that it's great if a scriptwriter trusts the director and allows the director to meddle in the text, in the script. It's not that I want to change the script because I want to prove something to the author. But I do have a different mode of thinking. I'm thinking more through a lens of a camera, and I want to introduce the changes in the notes. I improve dialogues because I know there's too much being said by the actors, and I know they play certain things without any words. So this is very important, that on the other side we don't feel offended, saying, "Oh, why didn't you change that for me? You added a scene, you deleted the scene." We don't have things like that, because this is not what it's all about. It's not about who will be the winner and who will be the loser. We are there to jointly create a good TV show or a good film. Yes, and also you have to take into account that the script is just a tool, and mainly a tool. The literary value of the script are very important in terms of dialogue. You can draw on literature. However, it is just a tool, and the tool serves the crew, and you have to remember that. If you really want to have this literary fulfillment, write a novel, write poetry. There's no director there. There are editors, of course, but let's say that this is still a tool, and this should be a well-written tool. It should be written in such a way that almost everyone from every department knows what it's all about. that the set design gets that the makeup design gets that they know immediately what's important, what's not important. I think it would be great to leave in the script space for those fantastically creative people that will come after you. You don't need to write them. I read a lot of scripts, and there's a lot of unnecessary information there, like really, really a lot. This is something that is absolutely always there. The information that don't lead you anywhere, that don't bring any added value. There's a very good rule. If you like the stage notes, if you're writing stage notes, if I'm writing a script and I give it to the crew, let's come back to that red dress. If I'm writing that the dress is red, it has to have some reason. It's not that that's how I see it in my head, but it has a function within the story. But describing how the furniture should stand in the room or topography of the house is, in my view, waste of time, of your time, because and our time, because the reality will never reflect what you have in your head, because we're working on the things that are there. Right now, it changed a bit, but as Fellini said, a film is realistic always in some way. If an elephant was standing on the mountain, you had to put the elephant on the mountain. Right now, you can make it in CGI, for example, or with the help of artificial intelligence. However, still, there is this belief that that film is material in some way. So you have to draw on the material world. Nobody will be building your ideas in CGI related to how the layout of an apartment, because it's a waste of time unless it's extremely important for the story. I'm asking I'm asking this to myself. I'm asking myself this question every day. So our protagonist. Sometimes we killed our protagonist because I don't know. It depends on the protagonist, I think. A very difficult question. Somebody once said very interestingly that film is life without the boring parts cut off, because our protagonists always get up to do something. Doing movies about the protagonists who have no goal. I mean, we have good films like that too, like art house movies about guys in a deep existential crisis. But I think our protagonists they get into some sort of criminal things, or there's a flood, or Hevelius is drowned, so is sinking. They have to something to get up for in the morning. I encourage you, of course, to make art house movies. Why? No, that was a joke. And that's great, but again, it's a question of definition. I disagree completely with this definition. I disagree with a lot of people. I think this is an anachronous division. Just like there is no division between cinema, streaming, and you do either good things or bad things. You do something that's interesting or not interesting, or fun or not fun. And I do feel that it was like this with a novel. At some point, somebody was writing a novel in episodes, and people say, "What are novels in episodes? We prefer to read like epic, huge novels. That it's a pulp fiction." But then a novel really took over for many years the whole art. Sphere of art, and even up to now, it's the most spacious. I would say the most spacious form of art, of literary art. There are movies, however, just like Patterson by Jarmusch, but Jarmusch is a master because he can combine the world of a protagonist who gets up to drive a bus. but we don't know why he gets up and he works with poetry. But Jarmusch at the same time is very embedded in all this American pop culture, and he can work with it perfectly. He's like a real pro. So his protagonist wake up for something, because it would be very difficult to make Jarmusch movie in Poland. For example, Coffee and Cigarettes, if it was made in Poland, it would not be well accepted, neither by the audience and the critics, but it's something different. I think Kondratiuk was the closest one to Jarmusch style for some time. I look at the script, just like we look at the movie, that the need and the task, the quest is important for the protagonist. It would be good that the protagonist thinks that they want something, and it occurs that he needed something totally different. I think that some storytelling American cliches are good. Of course, you have to break them afterwards, but before you break them, you have to understand them and embrace them. I think many people start from breaking, but they do not understand what they are breaking and how to break it properly. So our protagonist gets up to do something. It started in different ways. Janek came with Royst to me initially, and that's his, I would say, beloved baby until now. And I became a sort of a stepfather who started to take care of that baby too. I would call it in that way. And I really loved it. And now when we had this culmination of Royst, we were standing there and saying that we never imagined it would go so far, that we would make 3 seasons of Royst, that we would do anything. It was a time where we were writing just for fun. And then Anya, the producer, came to us with the Great Water. And she was sent to me I came with Heveliusz. I decided we have to make a movie about Heveliusz because I remembered this event. Sometimes we talk about what we should be done. We talk about it, and to the extent how many of our ideas are there, I don't think there's too much there at the level. I mean, not many things were rejected at the level of research, and Janek knew that he's taken into account as the director. Sometimes I work with people, and I do. There is a very small group of directors that are rightful, because there's a very small group of directors, paradoxically, who have this self-discipline, and self-discipline is very important for me in life. I didn't notice that. But many ideas at the level of are lost at the stage of research. I think like 40-50% are being rejected at the stage of research. And now I will be talking about the research on Sunday. I believe in Poland still has problems with producers, that not all the producers want to invest in research, and when they invest in research, they believe something has to be done. Something has to be created. That's not true. At the level of research, you might find out that there is no movie there. And that's life. But this is also changing. We had no problem with financing here. This is a Netflix production, and if Netflix decides to maybe there was a problem for the producer to convince Netflix that she needs so much money because you cannot make it cheaply. Then yeah, probably such discussions were held there. But for us, it didn't concern us when we were making a TV show for a big streaming service platform, because there's one source of financing. If you're trying to make a feature movie, this is a problem, because this source of financing, you have to look for them all around the town and maybe in other countries too. It's dependent on some sort of committee in peace in many different factors. So making a feature movie is increasingly difficult in the current reality when the cinema, it doesn't pay back. So because and the streaming, when you convince them that we're making the big water, we're making Cavaliers or whatever, when the producers are credible, because this is very important. When you have a producer who comes, who shows the budget, this budget can be shockingly big, but item after item, it goes through the departments, and they say, yes, this is how much it costs. If the streaming says, okay, and we're going there, we're entering this project, then yes, we're doing this. For the beginners, for people who are looking for the chance, a TV show can be a great opportunity, because if they write their own personal, their own TV show, and they go to Netflix or Showmax, and somebody will say, "This is great," it will be there. It will be done. If you want to start with a feature movie, well, I must say that I'm collecting money for my next movie. And you could say that you would imagine that it will be extremely simple, because Ewa Puszczyńska is my producer and Klaudia Śmieja, like the top of the tops. And it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing at all. We always sort of bump into this, that it's, we have problems after problems after problems. I do agree. Because maybe I was spoiled by Netflix. I'm pretty sure it did. But this sort of financing, in a meaning that, and the quickness of making decisions is very important for me. For me, peace takes decisions in a very long period of time. That's why it's not competitive at all. Just the stage of how the decision is made. I'm a person who gets bored very quickly. The imagination that I should work 4 or 5 years over a movie, just over one movie, is a horror thought for me. I would be totally unfocused, and I would move to other stuff. And that's how much time you need to prepare a movie in Poland. And it is so to a certain extent that, I don't know, that what Jan said, there are other ways. Of course, these ways do not lead to red carpets of the festivals, but you have to ask yourself a question: are you making this for festivals? Can those festivals give us enough? And what do we really want? For me, the important thing is to do stuff. Just really like to do stuff and do stuff and do stuff. And not wait for... And he is much better than I do. I'm quite often at reading rehearsals, but I'm not always there. And then at some point I leave the steering wheel to Jan. I'm always informed about the changes, and it never happens behind my back. And do I have this sort of inner feeling? I can only say that the only conflict, conflict that I have internally, is when I'm writing to Kasper and he doesn't respond for 2 days. I get so pissed off that he doesn't respond to me. But really, Sławomir, between us there are no conflicts, there were never conflicts. I never had this frustration growing in me because he's sending something to me and I'm reading that and I say, no, I don't like this. I can say what it looks like because this is interesting, but I'll just add one more thing, because I'm working not only with Kasper, I'm working also with other scriptwriters, so I do have a comparison, how differently it might look like. I've worked with Andrzej Gołda. He wrote 25 years of Innocence, and he's a great scriptwriter, older generation than us. And he initially had a problem with the fact that I was rewriting. I didn't tell him what to change, but I was changing things myself. Because for me, this explaining to other people what they should change and then rereading, it's a waste of time. I can do it myself. And then, of course, I ask him if he accepts that. And at the end of the day, I will be the one left with this text on the set, and I will be the one who will have to deal and struggle with those with those texts. So it doesn't make sense to sort of to send it back and forth. So we are, we're getting on the Mount Everest in an alpine style. There are two people. We have to have full confidence in one another. The conflicts, there are some funny events, some funny things. Let's say I'll write something that one sentence in a script, I will sort of say that Napoleonic army is crossing the river, and that's one sentence in the script. But now the director's problem how to do it. The paper can accept everything, and this is very interesting too. But I also am aware, because we've been working in one team forever. So I know that Jacek Udziela, who's the head of production, what he will change there. And I know how to write in order to say, Jacek, I wrote it here for you to just for you to have fun, but so it's more of a so there is a bit of a struggle between different divisions and production, but there are no conflicts. We had this example recently, and it's very interesting too. We've been working together on something, and it didn't work didn't go as it should have gone, but it was slowly going forward. Treatments were made. The first two scripts were done for episodes, and Jan completed Heveliusz. We sort of accepted it together. And then it went to Janek. Janek started to read that. He called me and said, listen, I know you will be angry because I will put a bomb in your toilet, but it doesn't work. And I knew it didn't work. I said, I know it doesn't work, because you feel it. And we both feel when we're going together. I know when my writing goes well, and I can defend my text. I can tell that, I know, I feel this, it works, just believe me. But in this case, I felt from the very outset, it doesn't work. And I said, okay, we have to start from the outset. I didn't say, oh, you agreed to that. Everybody said, well, we're moving forward, etc. No, because at the end of the day, I don't want to consciously destroy something at my level, and we feel I know what I expect from my text. Jan knows what to expect from the text, and I know why I'm working with Jan, because he has a lot of expectation from the implementation of my text. So I'm not working with many script writers, because I know they will not make it in such a way that I would want my things to be done. And I can say, out of my own experience with other script writers, because I must say, well, those who are close to me in a way, they're my friends. I know when there is a problem with the director and how difficult it is sometimes to get on terms with the director, because I do know when changes are for good and when somebody just tries to come up with crazy stuff and starts to approach the text in a wrong way. So you feel if somebody's feeling the mood or not, in which registers we work, in what sort of movies. If somebody's drops the title of a movie, we feel that we know that we're watching the same stuff, what we're trying to achieve. Of course, we both like American movies too. So I do have a feeling that sometimes, if a Polish author says that he likes American cinema, everybody goes, "Wow, oh gosh, why?" But the older I am, the more I appreciate. I absolutely love Spielberg, and I can put Spielberg higher than 90% of European art house directors who are very successful right now. I think that Spielberg is a genius, like cinematic genius, and I think Janek believes that too. Well, that's true, and like we really love that. Yes, I think he's the biggest. I'm not talking about we have Kubrick, we have Coppola, we have Scorsese, and Holoubek. And I think this is also a thing that brings us together, because you don't always have the same vibe. Sometimes I'm talking to a director and I'm saying, let's do it as if it was in Empire Strikes Back. Everything is there. The Empire Strikes Back. I can see their face. But Fellini is great too. He's a great master. Obviously, yes, true. But Fellini would love Empire Strikes Back, in a sense that Fellini knew, he discovered something from the very outset. It's a very simple, popular art. If you want to catch the god by his heels, go to the preschool or go to the musical school and learn to write fugues. This is a very simple pop art, which very deeply inside serves fun, whether it's a viewer's fun or crew's fun or we're having fun with the movie. It doesn't matter. It's all about, at the end of things, there's a circus that Fellini came up with, and Spielberg knew that, Scorsese knows that, and many other directors who we find really cool. And so there's no conflict really there, because we love to watch the same stuff, and we have watched a lot. And it's very important for the scriptwriter to also have a lot of experience with watching movies. It's good to watch good movies and bad movies. It's good to watch bad movies because you have the schematics which you can see there blatantly, and you can try to imagine how to introduce them, because these cliches are also in good movies, but they're well hidden.
o mojej współpracy z operatorem.
About my cooperation with the DOP.
Tak, to jest
Okay,
tak, że postanowiłem, że
so I decided that I need to find my own DOP who's better than me in cinematography. Somebody who was a better DOP, who would be a better DOP than me. Second, initially I was looking for somebody who's hungry. Well, hungry. And Bartek Kaczmarek is the guy who's right now, who has all these big productions under his belt. But when we were making the first rights, he was mainly doing commercials. Mainly commercials, but he did commercial in such a way that I really paid attention to that, because I'm also from the commercial world. That's why I was very careful in observing him. So now this cooperation looks in such a way that I decided not to interfere with lighting. To leave, this is all at the level of discussion over the script. We discuss how this world should look like, what should be the mood of the world. So it's easy for us to communicate because we can very easily discuss technical things. If Bartek tells me that we should use those lenses or other lenses, I know exactly what will be the effect. But I'm trying to not to get into his lighting decisions, even though sometimes I'm very surprised how different it is from what I thought. But I do think that this is great in this film industry, that people surprise one another with great stuff, with interesting stuff. I'm a bit greedy in terms of where I should put the camera, and I want to have influence on that fully, because I think that what is the language of the director is where he puts the camera. This is the language of the director. Everybody would put the camera in the same scene in a different place. Every director would come and say, I want to do this with Steadicam, and I want to do this in one broad shot, and somebody else would do it from 7 different angles. This is a language of a given director, and this is a signature style of the director. So this is something you have to defend, and it sometimes gets difficult with the cinematographer, who sometimes when I see with Bartek, we are one aperture apart. I'm saying, let's do it at 50, and he would want to put in 75. Exactly one aperture apart. It's just he's higher aperture and I'm a lower aperture. And we were doing aperture when we were doing Royst. He was one aperture below me. Yes? So that was funny. Of course, sometimes Bartek gives in, I give in to him. It is so that it might be a sort of difficult cooperation for somebody who was a cinematographer, but I'm not a cinematographer anymore. I cannot take care of everything on the set because I have to focus on the actors. That's why I'm taking a great DOP so that he makes great shots for me, and I don't need to be worried with that, at least. And I'm selecting my collaborators in such a way to give them space for the creativity, because they give it back to me big time. They bring in fantastic set design, fantastic costumes, fantastic shots, music, etc., etc. You just need to find for yourself the collaborators whom you believe, and not those whom you need to control.
Ja reżyserem zostałem stosunkowo niedawno.
I became a director not a long time ago, six years ago. And since that time, I'm just directing. But I think that the director is a guy who should know a bit of everything and understand
jakie są obiektywy,
what sort of lenses you have, what is spherical optics from anamorphic optics or some other optics. You should know that because that's your language, and you're the person that at the end of the day, if you know your tools, if you know your toolbox, you paint in a better way. If you cannot work with paints because you have somebody else who does paint, does preparation of the paints for you, you lack certain skill. You will never be very, very good. A good painter can do everything that is related to what he does. So I'm making things maybe simple, but the director has to understand technique, production process, why he cannot in a given cannot make shots in a given location, and he has to understand and not try to be stubborn that I want it to be like this. No, you have to be able to solve problems which are there at all times. Every day on a set you will have problems. Problems which are, for example, our cranes got stuck, we cannot put in the light, what are we doing? And together with the DOP you have to come up with something. It's not that you don't have those times already anymore that we can't do it today, let's do it tomorrow. You have to be ready at all times. You have to be a craftsman, a practitioner, a person who can who has his way with actors, who can write. It's like a profession where you have to be a jack of all trades. You should dance, sing, tell jokes. My father always said that it's the only person that is unnecessary on the set. That everybody has the function, and the director is like walking around, trying this, trying that, doing helping here, that and that. I mean, he's like a conductor. He's you're not necessary to do any concrete job. Yeah. I have experience in directing German actors, French actors, and English is, I would say, the easiest one for me, because I do understand a bit of German. French, I don't understand anything. So directing French actors in my own movie was quite a feat. But you can do that. I fall in love with my actors, and I really want to do something with them. But in my productions, it is so that to some extent this cast gets repeated, but sometimes you have new people. And I would like to have a movie where I would cast them all. I really. Because for me, the biggest adventure, when we're talking about what's great in making movies, in movie making, for me, the biggest adventure is meeting with actors. And of course, telling stories, etc., is fun. But at the end of the day, the core of my work is meeting the actors. And I love them. All of them. And that's it. I notice a certain trend that certain people are getting cast, but I never got an offer. We never had a surfer role in my film. This is this undercurrent, the underground conflict. I would say conflict just under our skin. This. I'm creating these characters and then.
były same obrazki, nie żartuję.
Znaczy wiesz, to była długa droga, bo
It was a long journey because I was writing Royst for a number of years. I was learning, to be honest with you. When I was writing Royst, I learned to read, to write because I had no knowledge. I never read any manual for script writing, but I decided to tackle something in that way, that you sit in front of a piece of paper and you start to write. And I discovered that this is an extremely creative process, that writing opens up your head. It is a building block of your imagination. Writing, you have to put it on a piece of paper to have it materialized. Just imagining something is not enough. I don't know. I think I was not even in school. I was not a cinematographer who had made cinematographer etudes, but I was always drawn to storytelling. So I think I was not a real DOP. My etudes had very low grades by the professors because they didn't focus on the lighting, all these strictly strictly image, but I had actors who played in those etudes, etc. They were saying things to one another, and they were even at that time I felt that this is my way. So a bad cinematographer can become a good director, and I'm an example of that. A very good DOP will not be a great director because he cannot let himself go from telling his stories just with images and not to follow the storyline and follow the protagonist. I don't know a case. I do know one case who's sitting here, a fantastic cinematographer who made a movie. But I do believe that I'm a good director because I was a mediocre cinematographer. So first you need to find out what you're better at and follow what you're better at. I do also believe that those texts, Jan, when I was reading Royst, it was a script. It was not even called Royst at that time. It was just a script called the script, impression, full of images. But I believe that I would say that if you want to write scripts, regardless of whether you're a director or a DOP or a scriptwriter, you have to read a lot. People tend not to read. You take movies, you draw from other film materials, audiovisual materials. But if you want to understand the structure of a story, you need to read. Read and read and read. That's the basic stuff for me. If you really want to develop your writing tool set. So watch and read and watch, and then you enter that full time to the full. Writing is not some sort of a dark art. In order to write, you have to write. Sit down and write. So I'm every day, just before I went to the filming set as a DOP, I took 1.5 an hour. No matter what happened, I'm writing. I don't care if it's going well or not. Just by writing, this starts to become easier. Just like raising just like training with weights. If you're doing that regularly, you can add weight and weight. Suddenly, after a month, you find something that you thought impossible. You find it possible. Writing is not black magic. It's a job. It's a profession, just like any job. It's a skill. So, but you need to sit down and write. Idea is a great thing, of course. Everybody has it in a different, and sometimes you have something big. You have a big event, you read it in When it comes to Royst, it started with the fact that I was in a wedding in Barcelona, a wedding of my friend, and somebody during the event said that he had a story at his where he lived, that 2 young kids committed suicide. They jumped off the roof of an apartment block, and it was a totally weird situation because nobody else saw those kids together before. And they started to build around this whole story like this crazy, weird love story that they had to be in love and nobody knew about that. Just a bit like Romeo and Juliet. And what occurred at the end of the day? That the girl was walking on the sidewalk and he fell on her. You don't have that in Royst, but that was the fuse for me that started the story about how a human needs to give sense, to imbue death with a sense and with reason, and how from the stupid accident a love story was created, which was not there. So I wrote about the first one, about the 2 kids and this journalist which builds the story in his head, and we start to see it on the screen, and at the end we find out that it was a total accident and it never happened. So this final was deleted from Royst, but the structure was the journalist stayed, the kids stayed, and then I added when I couldn't find money for an episode. I added another journalist and investigative journalism, this case of prostitute in the forest. I befriended a policeman from Bydgoszcz who was leading the case. So I went to Bydgoszcz. They told me something. I started to note these towns, started to work on this, and this is how the first series of Royst was created. There was a murder, there were kids of a prostitute, then I went to Kasper. Kasper started to develop this, and he pimped it up, as they say.
Znaczy, ja montuję w trakcie zdjęć sceny.
I'm editing the scenes. I'm editing the scenes on the go, and I'm meeting my editor, and we edit 6 to 8 minutes a day of the movie.
Jesteśmy w stanie zmontować w jeden dzień 8.
So we're able to.
12. Czasami jak to są jakieś trudne sekwencje, no to mniej, ale generalnie.
Sometimes they are more difficult sequences. All the projects that I did so far, a week after completion of the set, I had the first cut prepared, and for me this is the most difficult element of the editing, finding the right proportions and the storyline, because the first cut is too long. Always, quite often, the solutions that worked pretty well on the paper don't work in the storyline when you have the first cut, and you start to work with this Rubik cube, how to move where. You have to make difficult decisions, that you have to delete something even though you put a lot of effort to film this on the set. So if I find out that something is better for the project, that some scene will not be there, with all my love to that scene, it is deleted immediately. Because there's nothing worse than a story that doesn't tell itself, that doesn't flow. What I'm trying to do in editing, and this is difficult for me. Difficult, less or more, but it's always difficult. In the film about Tomek Komenda, I had this difficulty, or when should I introduce the policeman, and it was very difficult for me. In Doppelganger, I had a problem
kłopotliwe jest prowadzenie
I found out that it's difficult to have two parallel storylines.
kiedy
When at one moment you allow one and the other so that they interact well. It's very good to have a thought about it at the stage of script, not to be torn apart, not to think that okay, I introduce this guy and the other one guy takes a bit of a limelight from the first one. So these are the problems.
że niby to było napisane,
You sort of had it written.
w serialu też jest podobnie. No.
Well, in the TV show it's similar. We have even more of those storylines, and interweaving them is very difficult. For me, this is the biggest problem, how to find an ideal interweaving of the storyline. If you have only one protagonist, one story, it's pretty simple. You tell one scene after another, you delete things. And when others appear, for me, it's quite often rather difficult. I hope that you cannot see this later on the screen, but in the editing room, I must admit, the biggest struggle is how to introduce new storylines. And right now we completed the editing of Hewaliusz, and the first episode is always the most difficult because you have to start the story. And let's say you had a lot of interweaving in the script, and then in the editing room I put together the introduction of certain protagonists so that they were in longer chunks, so that the viewer could somehow get attached to them even before we get a new protagonist on the screen.
Ja piszę, moim zdaniem,
I'm writing for my characters, from the point of view of my character, and I'm striving to have the protagonists challenge one another. I'm not writing in motives. I know this way of writing. I do understand when we're working in a writer's room, like individual writers are responsible for individual motives or storylines, and I prefer to have it by characters. It's important to find. You need to have the answer. For me, working of a scriptwriter is similar to the work of an actor, in the sense that you have to understand every character, know how they work, what they want, and who they are. They will then go and meet one another if everything is well developed. It's a bit of a magic, but this actually happens. When you feel that there is no energy in the character, there's no energy there. When I started to work on the big water, on the great water, the journalist was supposed to be the protagonist. The journalist, and we were sort of thinking about it. And if I remember, I made the first sketch, the initial sketch. The station said, "Okay, interesting, do that." We started to do research. Everything started, and I even started to write. And I started writing, and the third, like the background character, there was a 65-year-old hydrologist. And suddenly this hydrologist took over the lead, and he started to come to the foreground. And suddenly I realized, which in Royce is a bit different, that a journalist, I must tell you from my experience, a journalist is a horrible person as a protagonist, because a journalist is always standing on the side. He's not inside the case. In case of the Great Water, she was going from point A to point B. Oh, it flooded here, it flooded there, the kids couldn't enter, the kids couldn't leave, but she had no stake there. She had no skin in the game. She didn't do any investigation. You could see what happened. I mean, the water got, flooded out. So at that point, when we started to think that this research is also very important, because we met Magda Mołek, who's a known journalist, but we also watched her programs. We talked to her. I met her vibe, what sort of person she is. And there was this hydrologist. We met those hydrologists. I decided, okay, we have to bring them together. A hydrologist has a skin in the game. Let's make a female hydrologist, because it's interesting for her. She knows something. This is how it started. And suddenly, a very important. I'm writing like as the group I'm working with. You know that I have two ways of writing a script. One method is conflict based. This is something I like. I'm looking for conflicts, and if I have a conflict, I know how this thing should go. And I'm also looking for conflicts in scenes. The second method is writing through certain stops. You know what's your what the story is, and you exploit everything that's related to that. Okay, let's say our motive is fatherhood. So think whom you can create for fatherhood. What are the scenes? What are the symbols, etc. And you build it in such a way. Plenty of people write it that way. I sometimes use that method, but I'm not best in that. I prefer looking for a conflict. In Heveliusz, I said, let's make a story of Heveliusz. It's easy to say, that's a great idea, but the fairy tips over and sings. It's half of a story, but it's not exactly a story. It's an anecdote for me. Yeah, the fairy just sunk. That's it. So we went to our first research, to the meeting with people related to that, and I went to the first meeting and I heard one sentence. I can't tell you which one, because I will spoil the whole series for you, but I heard one sentence and a certain thing that was apparently impossible. It was like I heard just one thing and I knew the TV show is there. There is a story. There's a story with which is fantastic. It was similar with the Great Water. The fact that a certain village says you will not destroy our flood walls, because it will flood the Wrocław, which is a big city, historical city. There was a conflict there, and this conflict had to be there. They have to work there. If you look Amadeus, for example, if you watch Amadeus, you can see there. It's like an art. It's a great word of art. Also in terms of scriptwriting. Every scene is about the same thing. It's about the same conflict shown in different ways. But it's just one case there. There's some Amadeus who farts, who has a strange laugh, and the only thing that's interesting for him is upskirting girls, but he's a genius. And there's Salieri, a nice guy, a cultured guy, educated, who cannot come to terms with the fact that he's not a genius, and that this bumpkin is a genius. It's a conflict between Salieri and God, really, not Amadeus. How about the injustice of the world. This is all this film is about, because we know that the only person, because we also know that only Salieri knows that Amadeus is a genius. And this is the gist of that movie. So thinking from that point of view, don't try to think in anecdotes. Don't try to think from the point of view of you try to think in terms of conflicts between characters, and then you have the drama sort of unfolds. That's why it's so difficult to write biopics. There are very few good biopics, because life has no drama. Like human life does not follow the rules of drama. In order to, this is what Janek said, just to take away the boring bits. You have to get this one thread and follow this. This could be 2 days of somebody's life. This could be the fact that somebody wants to transplant a heart, for example. Somebody has a goal. Somebody has a quest. Somebody wants to get somewhere and see something. But the drama is in conflicts, and finding those conflicts is most important. I said once, writing scripts is like mathematics for me. In mathematics, you add, you subtract, you have 10 numbers, 10 digits, and that's it. You can teach it in 20 minutes, and then you have to optimize. You have to get to more complicated ways of managing those few things. Some people get to such a level that they can do E means MC square, but some people have less of a talent. But at the end of the day, it's that you have very few tools in your toolbox, and you optimize between them. And you look for conflicts. If you have the conflict, you try to approach it at any cost. I would say that the ideal scripts, which probably there were few, maybe a dozen, a handful in the history of cinema, are those who really got everything concentrated in and sort of reached the core of search for conflict.
Więc tak, wydaje mi się, mnie osobiście, że self-tape'y nie muszą być...
For me personally, self-tapes do not need to be a film form. They have a film form. I do even have self-tapes where we have people with a sound. I saw self-tapes where they had like the sound of thunder in the background. So they make the like special effects, like lightnings, to get more into a certain atmosphere of disaster. I think it's unnecessary. The necessary thing is an actor, white wall, and the truth that the actor has or has not.
Też jestem, jakbym miał dać radę taką techniczną, to jeżeli masz grać
If I were to give you a technical hint,
ze słabym partnerem,
if you were to make a self-tape with a poor partner, don't take the partner. Just play your part. As a director, I know what the other person responds in a given place. There's nothing worse than to hear your mom or dad of an actor who tries to be partner in this, and they're horrible and they kill your performance. So you either select a fantastic actor who brings you up, or just don't do anything. And like Piotr Trojan, he made his self-tape with himself, and he was absolutely thrilling. Łukasz Simlat got a role of Mickey with me because I didn't even think about him initially. He got into the car, he put the camera, and he was driving a car, and he was dialoguing with Yaz, who was not there. And this might be a way to win castings. Self-tapes is something that is a good tool. I know that many actors don't like it, but self-tape can be repeated at home. You can make 10 versions and send the best ones. If you come to a casting, well, you have 1 shot or 2 shots, and that's it. It has good and bad sides. When it comes to Agnieszka, I don't think Kasper was writing anything about her. Oh yeah, but our hairdo is very similar.
Tak, dokładnie.
Natomiast rzeczywiście było tak, że ja
It is so that after reading a script by Kasper or one of the versions,
jakoś tę Agnieszkę sobie wyobraziłem w tej roli, ale na zdjęcia próbne zaprosiłem ją jeszcze...
I imagined Agnieszka in that role, but I invited also some other very good actresses to the rehearsals, but Agnieszka was absolutely the best for this role.
I dlatego
And that's why we selected her, but she appeared in my head only when I was reading the Kasper's text.
Znaczy, nie wiem, czy mam taki przykład.
I don't know if I have an example.
Co się zdarzyło.
Maybe there was a case like this.
Tak, że my
Generally,
na podstawie tych najlepszych
based
self-tape'ów
on the
zapraszamy
best
na
self-tapes, we invite actors for test shots.
I te zdjęcia próbne, no to ja już tam jestem, nie?
I was there usually during test shots. We make like 3 or 4 attempts. I give my remarks. I watch how the actor deals with my remarks, and then I more or less know who will work well with that role or not, even though that it's not that if somebody doesn't get a role is a worse actor. Because it happened also to me, I had to choose between two fantastic actors. But for this very role, this actor works well better with this role and not that one. For example, Michał Pawlik, you have a very good actor. He was self-taping for Tomasz Komenda role. And I didn't like that. I didn't like him in this role, but then I employed him for Royst, for Heveliusz, for other roles, because he's a great actor. He was not there with Tomek Komenda. It was not his role. If you lose a casting, I'm just talking to everybody here. It's a very difficult, very frustrating job, because it's sort of, if you're losing a casting, it doesn't mean that you're not okay. It means it might have not been a role for you.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank you.
Dzięki.